Welcome, friends. This is Sharon. I'm here today on behalf of Artemes, and I'm with my exquisite friend and colleague, Lisa Miller. I wanted to share with you all a little bit about Lisa before we start the interview. So she's an expert facilitator, teacher, and guide, especially for women. She brings to life perennial wisdom that provides the compass for a life of meaning, intuition, and well-being today. Through a diversified, holistic career spanning 2 decades, she's emerged as an internationally recognized champion of mind-body health with expertise in indigenous energy medicine, interfaith chaplaincy, yoga, meditation, and Ayurvedic health. Wow, that is incredible. So that your bio, I feel like sums up a little bit some of what it is that I admire and appreciate about you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. We're going to talk about leadership. And I feel like it's just an especially powerful topic for 2020. And I'm thrilled to be here and share this space with you.
Thank you. How lucky are we to get to share these conversations? We've been friends for a decade. You talk about 20 years practicing in a field. Well, friendship is enduring and always lasts and is such a marker of time. I'm grateful. And we've always had these kinds of juicy conversations.
For a long time, yes.
So I'm thrilled that we can talk about leadership.
Yeah. So first of all, congratulations on the birth of your new baby book.
Thank you.
The Heart of Leadership for Women. So again, such the perfect person to be here. It's so beautiful. What a pretty baby. So to start our conversation, Lisa, like how do you define leadership?
It's a really good question because many of us teach. You and I are both teachers. We're also leaders. And so I often ask myself, what is the difference between a teacher and a leader? And for me, the answer comes in the knowing that teachers are often leaders themselves. Therein lies a deep sense of obligation and meaningful commitment to live a life embodying the values of integrity, humility, respect, global citizenship, and some kind of relationship with faith, some kind of relationship with spirit, whatever name and face and personal meaning that is for people. In teaching and in leadership, there is a light holding capacity and commitment for those who are traveling the path that we are too, and whatever that path or whatever that theme is. But there's this deep knowing that there's meaning in being alive and contribution to global citizenship and those around us. So it's like a deep relationship with personal local story that then sheds a light into the collective.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you mention the collective and also using the word global citizenship. I feel like it's so easy, right, for us to be kind of caught in our like small corner of our community and of our world. But really looking at this a lot more broadly, which is one of the things at our teams that we're really curious and interested in. And some of our core values within our teams, we have the core values of, trust and equality and compassion. And when I think of leaders, there are certain things that I am definitely sort of like drawn to as far as what I would like those leaders to embody.
Yes.
And how it is that they live. If there was just maybe one value that that you would love to see everybody embodying more of and leaders embodying more of, what would that value be?
It's also a good question. And I thought about it. You gave me a little heads up that might be a question. And it's a great opportunity to get really focused and to continue to ask myself these questions, because in leadership for all these decades, I can become so so involved in the process of doing
Mm.
that there sometimes isn't enough attention and focus on the genesis of that. So it always brings me back, questions like that always bring me back to the core reasons for doing really anything. What are my motivations in the world? And what always comes up for me as a core value is, well, two actually. Humility, this way of measuring what is mine to do in the world. When you think of humility on a spectrum of not enough, we all know people who don't have enough humility, who take up a lot of space in a room or in a conversation or in a relationship, not aware that they're sharing a space with others. And then on the other end, it could be too much humility, where someone gives their energy away, gives their space away, allows people to cross boundaries into their own spaces. But in the middle is a more balanced place where one is aware of one's potential and humanness to be on both ends of that spectrum. But to aim for balance in the middle is really a good measure of personal humility. So humility as a core value for me seems to be a balanced structure from which I can then move about the world, think and act, and also allows me a focused point of entry from
Yeah.
places.
Mm.
So I'm considering my own needs, I'm considering others, and we're all in it together. I'm stepping in when it's important for me to step in, when it's important for me to have a voice, and I'm stepping back when others need room to do that and share the space with me.
Wow.
Therein also exists for me a deep relationship with awe,
Mm.
AWE, awe, with the higher powers that exist in the universe. And I had these wonderful Ayurvedic teachers who said to me a decade ago when I began studying Ayurveda, the natural medicine that is a sister science to modern medicine today, from India, that said to me, the intelligence alive in the universe that rotates the planets, that allows the moon to rotate around Earth, that then allows Earth to rotate around the sun. That intelligence that is alive in the universe, that moves the tides and tells trees when it's time to bud in the spring and when to hibernate in the winter, and moves babies through the body to be born. The intelligence alive in the universe is also alive in each of us. So to be aware that I'm always intimately connected with that biggerness of existence allows me a sense of awe. And people have all different names and faces for that awe in different faith traditions and different spiritual traditions, even in science. For me, it's important to always be connected with what that means for me as an individual, but also as part of this cosmic consciousness and part of this world that we live in. So humility and awe for me are married in terms of values and motivators for how I live my day and then how I exist in the world.
Those are really, really beautiful. And then just quickly on that note, when I also studied Ayurveda, that I feel like of all of the things that just most clicked with me and inspired me and was just like a big, like, oh, yes, was that fact of all of the magnificence and the intelligence that exist in nature and some of the most beautiful places that I've been, right? When I feel that awe, right? When I feel the presence in that moment of awe and that reminder, right? That Ayurveda reminds us that all of that that exists out there exists within here. And
Yes, yes. And you know, that quality of awe and ability to recognize that we're living in a miracle, that right? That we're suspended in space on this planet, and this planet is alive.
Yeah.
That for me is embedded in the humility and the awe, so that all of the other core values can be supported by that: compassion, integrity, respect, um, gratitude, loving kindness, purpose. All of that is held by humility and awe. And
Right.
even in the days when I'm really, really struggling with my ego stuff or my personality stuff, or the the inner critic, or the problems in my family, or the problems in my community, if I can anchor myself back in that bigger awareness that there is something more enduring than the stories that are happening right now on a local level in my life, then I seem to be able to move with more ease, grace, and confidence through those challenges.
Yeah, right. And just thinking how we all, like how all of us need every bit of that, and just having a moment, right? A moment of a glimpse, or a moment of like, wow, what would that be like, right? Of our community leadership and our state leadership and like all of our leadership, right? It was just kind of grounded in some of these core values, and they were like anchors, right? They're anchors, and they're present, and they're
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And as we're leading, right, as we're leading our families and communities and nations and world.
Yes. And there are days when it's really hard to get out of bed and function. Just for me in general, you know, I've just had a lifetime of anxiety, and so it's been a lifetime of practicing, figuring out how to get to a point where I can manage whatever's coming up and thrive rather than just survive. And so what has worked for me in the usual chapter of my life is working for me now in this time of pandemic too, because all those tools are really enduring tools. And I always want to remember and encourage people to realize that if there is a spark of teaching or leadership in the depth of being, if you realize that in yourself, then practicing what you know you're here on this planet to do will help you and motivate you on those days when it's difficult to get out of bed, because there is a bigger purpose for your life than just existing, thinking, and being can be a much richer experience, even when you're not in service to others. Just being present with what is, as Oprah says, from knowing the purpose of your life can make all of your mundane and trivial activities as meaningful as the big actions that you take in service for the world around you.
I love that. I love that. And so you briefly mentioned, some of these tools, and right, you and I are both very privileged to have a number of these tools that help us, right, that help us not only survive but thrive. And I get it, right? There are hard days and hard moments, especially in planning. But considering some of these practices and some of these tools, like what do you feel like could be like one accessible practice that people could really lean into at this time? And right, by the way that you define leadership and I look at leadership, right, this isn't just a conversation for people holding office, right? Leadership is it's a lot broader than that, right? It's the stressed out mom, right, with the 2 or 3 kids at home, and she's trying to homeschool and do all of those things. So for all leaders of all, right, of all variety, like what's a tool, what's a practice that you believe we'd all be better off?
It's great. And I don't know if you meant to do this. I don't think you did, but I have embodied both of those roles, from holding office to being the frustrated, exhausted mom. Sort of. My husband was in political office for a decade, and elected office, and so because he was, I was too. We were on duty. Sometimes we had to wake the kids up for a photo opportunity if it was a campaign election year, and so we had to embody that stability for the community. And then there were also days where I was just in the privacy of my own space, a mom, fully, completely on, nothing else mattered. I was just struggling to survive. In both cases, and I could only realize this once I had some distance from both, you know, my kids are in their 20s now, mid 20s. And so I've had enough distance and enough time. Also, my husband's been out of politics for a decade now as well, that I could connect the dots between the similarities and the tools that would have helped me in those times. And I listened to a podcast today by someone who had a near-death experience. He said that when he came out of it, it took him years to ground himself in being back in this physical reality. But that meditation was a tool he used daily. He had learned it before the near-death experience. He was hiking in winter and nearly froze to death, had hypothermia, went through all the stages of hypothermia, went into this space where he was no longer in his physical body, and had this conversation with what he called greater power, higher power, spirit. And when he came back into his regular life, he felt like he was being squeezed into a tiny space, that he had such a big spirit. He had the experience of dying and being released from the confines of his body, that he was so big. When he came back, and he had made the decision when he was out of his body to come back because his parents had grieved the loss of his younger sister, and he didn't want them to go through this grief again. And also he had made a commitment to his college group. He was touring with them, doing something. He'd made a commitment. There was no understudy, and he didn't want to bail on them, and they were going to be traveling like 65 cities. And so he had to come back to this life, but it was like squeezing, compressing all of this energy into this tiny little space called the physical body. But the way that he could manage all of that compression and all of the challenges of being in a physical body again was to meditate, to go. He said, I went deeper inside through meditation. The deeper I could go in my meditation to commune with the enduring part of myself, the more stable I could be out in the world, in the walking, waking time of my day. I have to say that meditation has been a big challenge and a great gift for me in my life too. You knew me at the beginning of my meditation seeking and training. Meditation for me has turned into a prayer time, has turned into a sacred journaling time, has turned into a contemplation time. I would say that that is one of the core anchoring tools that not only I use on a regular basis for my own stability, health, wellness, and thriving, but that wisdom traditions around the world have hailed for eons of time across the globe, some type of meditation practice where there is a silence, where the space of silence can open up and then shine a light into the waking hours of the day.
Yeah.
Right up there, and not second, but right up there, married with that, is my daily yoga and strength training practice.
Yeah.
If I go too long without either of them, I am like, it's like I'm operating with a DUI. You know, it's sort of like moving through my day where I think I'm just managing, and I think I'm making good decisions, and I think I'm acting from a place of right action, but I'm really not. I'm really lacking. I'm really only half a tank full.
Yes. I love that you mentioned within the practice of meditation. I think that oftentimes we have in our mind's eye this picture, right, of someone sitting cross-legged, right? They're maybe preferably up on a cliff, and they're sitting in like this state of bliss. And, you know, like that's just one, right? That's just one approach to meditation. So I also really appreciate, again, like the broadness of that too, because just like you, my meditation practice, which is really a practice in presence, right, and a practice of paying attention, it's
Yes.
one of the lifesavers. And last night that looked like, after putting my kid to bed, driving to a place that I could spend 60 minutes out in nature, right? That was
Hmm.
meditation, because of,
Yes.
right, the silence and the space that sort of fills me back up. And not always, but on a
Yes.
good day.
Had I had that tool when my husband was in office, I think I could have weathered the challenges, the storms that came with that, with more ease and grace. Had I had meditation when my kids were in elementary school, I think that I could have weathered their challenges with more ease and grace and confidence. So you learn by doing, and you learn by not doing, hopefully. And now in my 50s, really for the last decade, I've been committed to exploring what it means to sometimes just take 5 minutes to breathe, and that's my meditation practice for the day. Sometimes it can be 20 minutes, sometimes it can be 30, sometimes it can be twice a day. But whatever that silent space time that can be created looks like is the meditation practice that our teachers from around the world say is the important essence of the meditation. It's not what happens in those minutes that's important, but it's the resetting of the nervous system that carries into all the 23 and a half hours of the day.
Beautiful, beautiful. So to summarize, or to come to a conclusion for our time together, we all know that 2020 has presented a number of challenges, and it's just a challenging, right? We're kind of in it. We're all in it right now. And it's beautiful, right? I'm looking around the space that I'm in. I'm sharing this conversation with you. There's so much beauty even present with all of the chaos. So I'm just curious about what's giving you hope these days? Like what are you like clinging to or reminding yourself just to stay attuned to and present to all of the awe that's around?
Yeah, that's a good question. I need a continuous reminder of what has worked before.
Hmm.
So it's everything that I've done up to this point that has worked works now still. That is the foundation of support for me. Everything that I've ever learned, all the resources I've gathered in my life. It's hard, when your house is burning, to make the time to go out and buy a hose. So I like to encourage people that if there's time now and you can go out and buy a hose, buy it. If you've always wanted to, now is a good time. But everything you've done up to this point that has worked for you before works now still. Looking back over our lives, there have been zillions of times and experiences that we thought we would never make it through, that we couldn't have imagined we would look back on and say, wow, I did it. All of that counts and matters now. What has worked before works now. Still rely on it. There's no shortage of people who want to help us. Earth School is challenging, and we all have our own curriculum to live. Gary Sukoff says that so beautifully in Heart of the Soul and Seed of the Soul. But the truth is that none of us are alone in this Earth School journey either. There are tutors along the way, mentors, there are leaders, there are friends and companions. So look around for the resources that are available, lean on them. There are times we have to hold ourselves together, holding the glue together. And there are times we're allowed and we have the space and the permission and the invitation to fall apart. It's all part of the human experience. Knowing the difference between those times and who those people, those confidants are, is really important too. To be in the fullness of being human is as important as being in the depth of being a spiritual being, having a human experience.
Yeah, wonderful. That's really beautiful. I imagine that there's going to be some people after watching this, they're going to want to grab your book and read more of what you have to say and learn more about you. So where can people find you?
I would love it. I would love it. So I am at lisamillerbeautifulday.com. And my book, The Heart of Leadership for Women, is on Amazon. You can also order it through your local bookstore. I would love to hear from you. I hold a regular virtual talk show, and I also hold workshops, Zoom shops on the heart of leadership for women, and where people can come and talk about how it is they might be called to also be a light holder for others, to be a teacher and light holder for others in their families, in their personal lives, or in their communities, in their professional world, in the global, in the on the stage of global citizenship. We explore all of that goodness, and
Yes. And
so
it's,
glad to be there with friends.
yes, they're fabulous, fabulous gatherings. So I will be sure to link some of those things too, and sharing this video. Well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for being here. It's always such a joy and such a pleasure to, yeah, just to get to share these conversations with you.
I feel the same way about you. Really blessed and fortunate.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.